Thank you very much for the introduction. Good news and bad news. Bad news is tea is starting now. The good news is that the previous speakers have said a lot of what I was going to say, which adds impetus to it because it's relevant, but it also means that I can skip over it. So with any luck, I won't take my full 15-minute slot. So instead of going over what I'm going to tell you, I will just tell you what I'm going to tell you. So Declan has mentioned that CMI is focusing on a number of technologies to create a weather map that can pre-warn underground workers of the potential risks of the upcoming shift. And my proposal is, well, let's mitigate that risk even more and take people out of harm's way. We can see where there is harm identified in this weather map and move on. So I'm proposing that a robot can patrol unoccupied areas, gathering data to generate this risk map, providing an additional tool for the miners. So much as Declan mentioned the tools that we can give somebody in an early entry examination situation, I'm saying let's take that person out of that risk. I've got some mining statistics. This was the monthly report from March, which, if you remember the graph that Tabo put up, it was a particularly bad one. I didn't know it at the time because that was the latest one when I put this together. But 9 people died specifically in this report, and 7 of them in rockfall incidents. The technology I'm looking at is specifically looking at rockfall incidents. The implication of that is that over the previous year, a miner dies approximately every 2.5 days, implying that over the course of this conference, statistically, a miner has died, preventively, and potentially in a preventable accident or incident. Again, you will have seen this. This is fatalities per year per commodity, so I'm not going to dwell on it. It's nice to see that the trend is decreasing in these last number of years. This is the data that I had was only until September 2009. Again, you've seen this, just indicating that fall of ground in the data that I had was the most significant. This is now 2007. 40% of underground fatalities were as a result of fall of ground. Now, I wanted to draw your attention to this graph here, which is the American equivalent. It's significant both in that the contributing mechanisms for fatalities are similar, but this graph is 2007 made up of 220% fatalities. This graph is 2003 to 2007 made up of 116. That's a very, very big difference. There are a whole plethora of reasons for that, but the fact remains that there is this disparity. What's happened since 2007, fall of ground has maintained its position as a significant factor, indicating we should focus on that. So what is the fall of ground? Why does it happen? Well, fall of ground is a statistical certainty unless you do something about it. People are injured because they're unlucky. They're standing in the wrong place at the wrong time, and the rock happens to fall on their head. The last time a complete investigation was done on fall of ground incidents was 1993, and their primary finding was the reason that there was an incident in the fall of ground was that the entry examination and testing was done inadequately. So my robotic proposal is saying, let's take the human element out of it, take them out of this risk. I'm going to go about what this job entails just now. Gain some understanding. There's also, across the industry, there's no generic name for this job of making the area safe, testing the roof to see what you need to do. Different mines have different names for it, different industries, platinum, gold, coal, have different names for it. So how do we prevent it? Well, as I mentioned, the early examination process. Any time a miner goes into an area that's been vacant for a while, that has had a blast, he needs to go in, and the unlucky guy taps the roof with a hammer, and based on what it sounds like, he makes a decision to determine whether it's stable or unstable. If it's unstable, he's got some choices. He can bar it down. He uses essentially a crowbar to make the roof fall down, making it safe. He can support it with temporary support, or put in some permanent support. And there are a variety of those. So this picture shows one of the potential supports that you can put up, which is a wooden pillar. I just want to describe this job to you. It's got to be the worst job in the world. You see how tall, how far away the roof is here. So it's essentially under this table. And the guy's got a hammer and a hard hat. And he's got to crawl under this hammer, this table, and tap it to see where it's safe and where it's not. I can't imagine anything worse. So I propose let's take them out of this area. And Declan talked about the technologies that we could do that. These are the times that it needs to happen, and it needs to happen a lot. The mining environment is unstable, it's constantly changing, so this entry examination happens often, not just once a day when you re-enter after a blast, but when you re-enter, you have a shift change and going into a different area. If you're going into an area that hasn't been mined for a while, this entry examination needs to happen. So what do they do exactly? Conventional mining is a cyclic, which has been mentioned, drill, charge, blast, and clean. This is a picture of a pinch bar. That's the tool they have together with this hammer. Somebody's got to determine if it's safe before the workers enter. And bearing in mind that 50% of rock-related fatalities happen in the stope. So not only is this a really uncomfortable job, but he's working in an environment where he knows 50% of all people who died with a rock filling had happened in this area that he's determining if it's safe or not. It's the responsibility of the shift boss, but who exactly does it, as I mentioned earlier, it's everybody's job to do this early examination. So, using this pinch bar and hammer, he needs to detect and remedy unsafe hanging wall conditions. It's based on experience. They can mention some technologies to help assist with this experience, but everybody waits while it happens. It's a very stressful job to know that your team is waiting to do their work while you're determining if it's safe. A couple of pictures I'd like to draw your attention to. This looks like the bad thing, right? A large fall of ground, but actually these little ones on the side that most people don't even notice, those are the things that if a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it. Similar thing, if these all fell at some stage, they're only reported if somebody happened to be standing there or it fell on their head. Nobody really can tell you what type of fall of ground incidents there are, because they're only reported when some lucky guy is standing there. Who is at risk? Everybody. The miner has some tools to assist him that Declan has mentioned. The pinch bar and hammer, traditionally electronic sounding device, and now new ones coming on the market in thermal imaging. Now I'm saying, let's put all those things onto a robot to take a person out of harm's way while he gathers this information. So when the miner gets into that environment, he's pre-informed and pre-warned. He doesn't have to find out where the danger areas are. He knows. I'd like to go through the cost of an incident. Somebody dying is terrible, but there's an economic cost, and it's terrible to be able to actually put a cost on somebody's life. But in 2009, AngloGold Ashanti lost 166 shifts. And doing some maths and simulations, we're looking at about 3 million rand a shift. Not all of them were as a result of an incident, but that's the cost of losing a shift is 3 million rand. So we've got 500 million rand lost for a single gold mining company with shutting down the mine for a shift because of safety-related incidents. The industry cost, that was one mine with 152 deaths across the industry. What is that industry cost? We've also got the cost of inefficiency. With this making safe process, with everybody waiting, everybody's waiting. Typically in a mine, all blasts are coordinated. They happen at the same time every day. Everybody gets out. But if something in the process doesn't happen, the driller doesn't get a chance to drill all his holes. The entire cycle is lost. This is typically measured in the blast ratio. So ideally, you want to blast every day. But if you blast every day, it applies the 24 meters per month face advanced, but typically the mines are reporting about 16%, which is about a 66% blast ratio. So if we can improve that by not having the team wait for the making safe process, we can improve the blast ratio. How much? We don't know. But a 1% improvement in blast ratio implies 1% more ore blasted, implies 1% more gold mined. That's 1% of the bottom line. So the implication of a faster inspection is better blasting and more profit. So the robot's potential to assist, well, typically, as I mentioned, the blast happens at the same time every day with nobody in the mine. The robot can be there. So in the 3 to 4 hours of the unproductive times, because of fumes and seismicity, the autonomous vehicle can patrol the areas, generating a risk map for the upcoming shift, akin to the weather map Dick can explain. Also, having a faster making safe process. So we have an indication of unsafe areas. People don't stand in the unsafe areas, therefore fewer incidents. You've seen this graph that Olaf put up. It's just showing the increased seismicity after a blast. You have to wait for it to get down to background levels. Just showing that we've got about 3 hours that a robot can wander around gathering data. Here's another example of a stitched image of the hanging wall. This is one that I took, and knowing the theory behind it, I was worried, because I was lying down on my back with the thermal camera on my chest, looking at the ceiling, thinking I'm looking at a cold spot. And you've seen the theory about what the cold spot means. It means that potentially this rock here could fall down. I just wanted to show this piece of support similar to this one here. It's probably at the same temperature, but different emissivity give it a different apparent temperature. But this is some of the technical challenge we're facing. One picture with the thermal camera just takes a little picture here. You can't make any decisions with that. Dick can expand on that quite nicely, so I won't dwell on it. So robots can make mining easier and safer. So we've got the thermography, the thermal imaging to identify potentially unsafe areas. If we take the sounding device and put it on the end of a robot arm here, we can now delineate that potentially unsafe area with the current techniques that are used and indicate exactly where everything is. Declan went on about the localization. Where is the robot? Underground. We've got that technology that's being developed. I call it an underground GPS. There's no GPS down there, so we need something to determine where we are. Creating a risk map for mitigating action on the upcoming shift. So in conclusion, robots can assist in making mines safer and more efficient by pre-examining the stope area prior to human entry, providing a risk map, indicating where mitigating action is required, improving the current making safe process, saving approximately 800 million in lost production as a result of mining-related, of rockfall-related incidents in the stope, and saving upwards of 36 people's lives. And that's under the current mining conditions. As we go deeper and deeper, there's more and more potential for things to go pear-shaped, and rather have a rock fall on a robot, turn around and get the next one, then have a rock fall on somebody's farm, somebody's motor. So that's all I have.
Right, that concludes our session, and really we have run a little bit over time, so tea's already happening, and we're going to get evicted soon because the next session starts.